You are listening to episode 287 of Game Deflators Podcast. My name's John, and I'm joined by Ryan.
Hey, everybody, here at the Game Deflators Podcast. We like to talk about games. We've recently picked up games we're currently playing, and we manipulate a mathematic mouse in this week's Inflation Deflation Challenge.
So this week we are playing QBillion on the Game Boy, so hence manipulating a mathematic mouse. And next week we'll actually be checking out Super Off-Road Baja. I believe that's what it is. It's coming up next. So you can check that out on our upcoming games we're playing. But Ryan, tell the people what they're going to learn about this week.
Yeah, so this week we think back about Xbox and where they came from, and then we take a look at a rumor from Sony trying to resurrect their own history.
Good stuff. And before we get started, you can find us on the GameDeflators.com, our out-of-date website. Actually, no, I think it's up to date this week. I don't know. Go check it out. Go look at it.
By the time you get there, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? It might be out of date at that point. Actually, by the time this episode is up, then yes, it will be out of date. You can also find us on not the GameDeflators.com. I was about to say it again. You can find us there. But you can also find us on social media at Game Deflators on X. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at The Game Deflators. You can also find us on YouTube. Look us up there for some old videos, a whole bunch of stuff that we got going, along with podcast apps if that's your way to listen. And of course, you can find us on the podcast app you're listening to right now. Leave us a 5-star review, like, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff.
I mean, you're already there. You're already listening. Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah. All right. Pickups. So I did it, Ryan. I picked up Gollum. Gollum. Yeah, I did it. So pick that up along with on the same website, Ad Infinitum, which is a horror game of some sort. I've had my eye on it for a while and just decided it was $15 for a PS5 game, a horror game that had decent reviews. Why not? So those were my two pickups.
Before.
Yeah, look it up. Obviously got the spelling on there, but it looks pretty interesting. As far as what I'm currently playing, though, I started Alundra since we last spoke. And I'll say, actually, no, I think I had already started it, and now I've continued. Alundra is decent so far. I mean, it's really interesting because you have like these dungeons that you go into via somebody else's dreams or nightmares. And so you're supposed to complete these dungeon puzzles and everything else. And it's, live action combat, so you're not sitting around doing turn-based stuff for an RPG. So it is kind of difficult with the jankiness of the PlayStation 1 and the movement of that. But so far it's pretty decent. I'm liking the story. I'm attempting to put in like small bits of time, and then when I start recognizing I'm falling asleep, saving. So right now I am in a mine. So it's like dungeon number 4, I think. And so basically I went into there was this guy that died in a mine, or he was dying, and you like infiltrate his nightmare and you see like why everything happened the way it did. And then he passes away. So spoiler for everybody. And then when you go to the mine, like you're finding all of these dead bodies everywhere, and they're so descriptive. It's kind of crazy. One of them's like, oh yeah, his fingers are wrinkled and he's getting stiff and he's clearly been in the water for some time. I'm like, that's very descriptive for a PlayStation 1 game on how somebody has died. So it's pretty cool. So I'm liking it so far, and we'll continue on with my new games resolution. And I think I'm 4 hours in technically, but I want to say about an hour of that is me falling asleep at the control. So ignore the time. Then we also started Bramble the Mountain King, my wife and I.
That looked interesting.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting game. It's kind of like a horror game, but it's not a lot of jump scares. It's more like lore, basically. Like that's what you're kind of playing. And graphically, it's a beautiful game. Like we actually really did like that. The controls for like the character are a little iffy, but for the most part, it's pretty cool so far. Only gotten into about maybe 15-20 minutes, but what's funny is because how short the game is, if you go onto like the PlayStation dashboard, it says you've completed 6% of the game. Like we spent like 15 minutes and it says 6%. So that was kind of funny. And the reason that we're actually playing Bramble is because we completed the secret game, Ryan. Secret game is done. Your guesses come down to today. So I will open that up to you right now, so then I could talk about said secret game.
All right. So is it PS2 or older?
It is not.
Okay. So going back through, it's not PS2 or older. It is not a Nintendo console game only. It is something I have played. It is not a co-op shooter. And it is not longer than 20 hours.
That is correct.
Okay. So trying to think of like some shorter, more modern games that I've played that would be something that would be like, I mean, I'm going to be disappointed if this is just some like random game that you chose and it really has nothing to do with me. Like, I use the secret game as a way to get back at you and finally have something over you and finish a game. So I can't imagine what you're getting out of this other than just holding it over my head at this point that I don't know what it is.
I mean, that's kind of a part of it, but go on.
Let me think here.
I'm going to start playing Jeopardy music for you. You should have your guess locked in, Ryan. And that's cheating. Come on now.
What do you mean that's cheating? I'm just
You're like taking your
game is
taking
like
your sweet time.
out yet. Okay.
We're gonna have
this did come in March. I'm going to guess Hi-Fi Rush.
You are incorrect.
Dang.
And I actually thought that you were gonna get it last night because of a comment you made when I texted you. You said in a comment to me when I said I've completed the inflation deflation, and to get your guesses ready, you said you still got to finish the true ending. We beat Tunic.
Oh, you did Tunic. Awesome. How'd you like?
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't like my favorite game. We kind of wanted it to be done with after a while, and I'll go into my details there. But yeah, your comment on like the true ending, I'm like, oh, that son of a bitch knows it, like because there's a true ending tied to it. So I'm like, it's got to be like he figured it out. So when you had your guess here on screen, I was like, oh yeah, no, he has no idea. So Tunic, we did an inflation deflation on that a long time ago, and I said, yeah, it's totally like it's worth it considering like the manual, the stickers, all the things that you get out of that version that I had. And I would stick to that. I would say it's still worth it to play it, but you have to go into the expectation of it is difficult to understand that game and all the things that are tied to it. Like the world is really cool. It's vibrant colors. If you like that style of like the Link's Awakening chibi type of character going for you, along with like Zelda style games and Dark Souls. Like if you kind of mixed all that together, that's what you're getting out of Tunic. I liked it for the most part in terms of gameplay. The boss battles I thought were pretty cool. What I didn't like is the puzzles felt like damn near impossible for the most part. So if you're to find the pages, for example, you have to find all these fairies. And the only way you find these fairies is if you recognize on the wall the little like pathways that you're supposed to put in with your holy cross, which is your D-pad, to find these fairies. And that's how you get the last page. And you're supposed to, of course, find a manual to be able to do one thing that I'll note in the end here. But overall, like, unless you were looking at a guide for the most part, I would say it's damn near impossible to get any of this complete. It's in a foreign language, the entire game. So you don't understand what's happening. You're just kind of traversing this land with this idea of like, I'm just going to go around and beat bosses, I guess. So super weird in that respect. It's one of those games that you kind of are blind the entire time unless you have like those manual pages you get. And even so, they don't really give you enough detail to say, oh yeah, like this is what you have to do to get it all done. Like one big puzzle was like that big door that you're supposed to unlock to like pay the cover page for the manual.
Yeah.
It's like, how would you have ever figured that out unless you were sitting there with all the manual pages you've completed at that point and then finding hidden clues within the manual to be able to figure out the actual like code to unlock that door? There's no way. So thank God for the internet. I will say
that you have to cheat it out a lot.
Oh yeah, I totally cheated the damn thing out. Like there's no way I would have that would have taken me forever. There's so many times I got frustrated at that game because of just little things that you're like, why is this not happening? Like, why is this not working? Why can't I find X item? Why am I not able to get to this part of a level, or what am I missing? And it's like things like a staircase hidden behind a wall, or there's like a ladder that like you don't see, and the only way you get to it is if you go through like 3 pathways to find the ladder to climb up. So
Yeah.
it was stuff like that. It was cool, cute game, a lot of cool fighting. I really love the mechanics, but there's just some stuff in there that's like, come on, like, did you really have to do that? Like, as a developer, like all of these weird hiding spots or everything, it's like you took the secret door and like amped it up to like 11 at that point. So
Right.
it was just too much of that for my liking. But overall, I liked it. I found all the manual pages, of course, because I cheated, and I did not have to do the final battle with the air, which was nice.
Hmm.
Because once you collect all the pages, the air is like, oh, hey, here you go. We'll knight you or whatever, and we're good to go. So,
Oh,
uh,
okay. I didn't even realize that had
so
like a
did you?
different thing.
You had you fought the air then?
Yeah, yeah, I just did
Yeah.
that. It was I really like the game. I mean, the thing that I think is the best part of that game is just that you get so much out of this kind of like old kind of style and experience where it's like everything isn't really just laid out for you. You really have to kind of do a lot of your own work, make some of your own notes, make some inferences from the manual that you have, but like only having pieces of the manual is just like such a fun way to pull it all together. I really like that game. I definitely agree that some of that stuff is like certainly frustrating. It takes time, and I'm sure I had to look stuff up when I was playing it, but I definitely did my best to try to not do it, just to say that, I was doing that.
And I'll say, like, 15 years ago, right? I would have taken that game and I would have done exactly what you're saying. Take notes down, write stuff down so I know what's happening, any sort of codes, any markers, kind of keeping track of things. I would do that type of thing. But that's 15 years ago. I'm at a point now where my time to play is when my son is asleep.
Yeah.
So,
You're
it's a
limited.
very limited, yeah, it's a limited period of time, so if I wanna complete games and get through them, I have to have guides in front of me to kinda go through them at that point. I'm not in this mindset of like, "Oh, I really gotta explore every facet of the world and understand things," and that's honestly why I looked for all the manual pages, so I didn't have to beat the air, because I would've been stuck there an extra, like, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour trying to beat that enemy. Like,
Like,
to me, it wasn't worth, like, sitting back to do that battle when I'm like, "That's the last battle I need to worry about."
mhm.
So like, let's find a way around this. And when I heard that you could just go ahead and find manual pages and like avoid the final boss battle, I was like, yeah, I'm down for that. All the other boss battles were fantastic. Like the scavenger, dude, I had, as frustrating as it was to play against the scavenger, I had so much fun with that boss battle,
It was a
just
fun
because of,
boss.
yeah, just because of like how unique it was. You had like this, I don't know, Tron like environment kind of going for you with this scavenger boss that's shooting a shotgun and slamming the ground and has a giant sword, like very Dark Souls esque for the game. And I really did enjoy that piece of it. But once it got kind of towards the end, those frustrations started to bubble a bit. I was like, yeah, I'm kind of done at this point. So yeah, and a lot of that kind of is tied to the fact that there's no story, like no key
Mhm,
story that's in there, right? Like as you're kind of going around, like the only words you really see are when you're in like your spirit form,
mhm.
and you walk up to the center like, oh yeah, defeat the air, right? And like that's the only thing you see, and then everything else is in that weird language. I feel like if they would have had an actual language that's telling you about everything that's going on in the world, that would have been a lot better. But it's missing completely. And so that would be, in my opinion, the one big fault of this game is just a pure lack of a story, and you kind of having to use your, really just kind of guess what's happening, right? Like you can kind of understand like what's happening in this world, but like you don't know at the end of the day, right? Like why
Mhm.
are we ringing these bells? Why is there an error? Did the error die? Am I the new error? Like these are all things that I've kind of figured out throughout and figured that maybe that's what's happening, but it's not very
Mhm.
clear. So, but overall, I would say play it if you're into those types of games. I think you'll enjoy it and just kind of go in the mindset that there are a few things that are like, not the best.
Yeah.
Uh, on to you, sir.
Yeah, so not a whole lot of new stuff for me this week. I did get a new phone, sort of. I got a hand me down old iPhone 10. So I've been just kind of messing around with that. So with all the new emulation scene arriving to iOS, I checked out a couple of the emulators on there. The Delta one is the one that was like the first one. I think we had talked about that at some point, but it's really nice, actually. I like it a lot. It's got some good skins. It does like all Nintendo stuff, um, up through like N64, but no Dolphin out yet, so no GameCube or Wii stuff. And I don't even think this phone would handle that pretty well. It gets pretty hot doing some of the stuff that I'm doing, but um, I think it's really fun. One thing I checked out, I was like, what's a good game that would be, something I could put on my phone that's pretty lightweight and just kind of like fun to interact with occasionally? Because I don't really get too deep into like having games on my phone. It just doesn't feel really like worth investing the time into it. Um, so I checked out Animal Forest, which is the original N64 version of Animal Crossing. It was released in Japan on N64 and never got outside release until they ported it up to GameCube after and made a bunch of additions and stuff. So it's really nice. It looks good. It's exactly kind of what you would imagine that to be, and I am enjoying it. The only thing is, like, I had to use like a fans translated ROM that's patched, and the translations are pretty good. It does like pretty much everything except for like the items. The items that you like pick up and put down in your house are all just Japanese characters. So like when I find something or go to like buy something, I've like no idea what it is if it just has that like leaf shape and just like the words are all in Japanese. So I got to run to my house and drop it down to see what I got.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Does it
Mhm.
like in the inventory or options after the fact still remain as a leaf, or does it actually like show what it
No, it
is after
always
the
just
fact?
has a leaf instead of like the individual icon for like, here's what this bed looks like, but really tiny.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. So that's just one of those Animal Crossing quirk things that, I'm and the main reason I thought it would be fun is because like I like the idea of Animal Crossing with like holidays and stuff, but it's like when it's Christmas, I don't necessarily like be like, oh, I gotta go run and grab my Switch to play Animal Crossing for the first time in 2 years.
We have to ask Barry next time we talk to him if he's still like
Does
doing
it?
his dailies. Yeah, I'm kind of
I
curious.
think he told us a while ago he wasn't, but I would be curious to ask again to see if he does go back for holidays or anything.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
maybe he is still doing it. I'm misremembering.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't ask him last time. We'll have to ask him next time.
yeah, that's everything I was really messing around with this week. We are getting to about halfway through the year. So I'm probably like, another 3 or 4 months away from starting my new games resolution.
It's so bad. What are you doing again?
Bug Fables.
Okay, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. Um, I'm
Oh,
playing
and
like a
I'm not even
40.
gonna be able to play Mario.
I mean, it took me about 5 months to do Tales of Symphonia, so I'm really hoping I can beat Alundra by the end of the year. Just
Yeah.
kind of based on how things have been going with me in RPGs in the last like couple of years of falling asleep.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. It's
Did
crazy,
you
dude. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I could stay up easily. I could sit back, watch TV, do things around the house, be on the computer, no problem. But the second I have a game control in my hand and I like sit back, I just doze off.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. So, is what it is.
Um,
Nothing I can do.
did you get Thousand Year Door remake?
No, I did not.
Okay, because I heard they canceled like a bunch of pre-orders and people are worried it might be like a short run.
I don't think that's it at all. I think it's Nintendo trying to combat like scalping is what it comes down to because they're only canceling for online orders. They're not canceling for like in store.
Yeah, I know, but it's like I mean, do they really care about scalpers? Like they're selling games either way. They've never cared before.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think
It's
it's gonna
just
be a
I
short.
was really hoping you already like had one on order that I could just like borrow and play because it's like I'm not going to be getting it anytime soon. It doesn't
I
seem.
don't intend on buying it, to be
No.
honest. Like, no, not right now. At least we'll see. I'll probably get like a used version down the road.
Hmm.
I don't think it's gonna be a short order,
I hope
like
not.
at all. I don't think
That would
so.
be very disappointing, I think.
Like of all, like why would they put a you know larger release for Super Mario RPG, but then one of their more popular Paper Mario's like not do that? Like that's kind of weird.
Who
So
knows?
yeah, unless it's getting like re-released on their next console.
Yeah. Well,
I don't
that
know.
kind of transitions well, I think, because like I know why I really want that game because it's a game that I've really played before. But when I've been looking for new games and stuff like through the Vita or whatever, it's sometimes it's really hard, especially when you're staring at like, okay, I can play any game, or like you go into the store, I could buy any game. Like, what is it that really catches your attention and brings you into purchasing or getting into playing a new game?
So for me, I have like two ways I look at it, right? I've got a lot of those like AAA games that I always have my eye on. Nintendo has games that all obviously get released. I'm like, yeah, I want that first party title. Same with Sony. But then there's those games like you heard me say earlier, Ad Infinitum. Probably everybody listening on here has not heard of that game. I hadn't heard of it. The only reason I find some of these games is I go down rabbit holes, to be honest. Like like Martha is Dead, for example, a horror game on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. That's a game I want to play, right? I think there's another one called Madison, which is another horror game that I want to get as well. But these are all games that like you find one and then you go to like, hey, these are suggested, and you start going through and you're like, oh, that's kind of unique. I haven't seen something like that. Or it just has that like the visuals look pretty cool. And it's like, okay, are the reviews decent for the people that have played it? If so, then yeah, I'll usually kind of have my eye on it as like potential, game to pick up. So Bramble King of the Mountain is one of those. I was randomly looking at some different titles on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. I saw the cover. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. Let me see what the game's about. Read about, the lore aspect and the type of gameplay and that it's horror based, and saw that the graphics look pretty decent. I was like, okay, it's got 4+ star, review on Amazon for however many. That's decent. Let me go ahead and pick that up and just see about it. So a lot of these, I just kind of take a flyer on them
Mm.
as, they're just kind of random games that are not critically acclaimed. They're not like widespread releases that have a lot of notoriety behind them. So like just take a flyer, see how it goes, and worst case scenario, a lot of those games are like $30 and under. So that's
Mhm.
usually what my eye is on. Anything is like under $30 that I can throw a quick bit of cash to. It sometimes find it used for even less than that, and you know, see what happens. And then
Yeah.
it's just added to collection. And oftentimes what's interesting, oftentimes those are the games that end up going for a bit of money down the road too,
Hmm.
because they're just not, nobody had their eye on to begin with, and then studio goes under, whatever it may be, and now you're looking at a physical copy of a game that maybe wasn't released on Steam, or wasn't released on any other consoles. They had a short print run, multiple factors that are tied into that, and then you're looking and you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I bought that for $15, but now it's like 60 or 70. And thankfully I did buy it when it was cheaper because of that. So I know some people kind of take that same mentality I do. But what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who doesn't spend very much money on games and stuff anymore, usually when I think about games that I've got my eye on or what tears me towards a game, like a lot of times it's usually something that I'm already expecting. Like, we do the podcast. I watch like so much gaming news. I take notes every year, like at the E3 conferences, about like what looks good in the trailers so that we could talk about it here. So it's like usually anything really good, I see it coming down the pipeline as it's coming. But most of the games that have really kind of like knocked me out and been like, this is something I need to get, is usually, mostly from hearing about it from other reviewers that I trust now. I don't really have a great track record of like, grabbing games and then those are the games that I end up like being like really invested in, you know? And like I've tried to get games on just like a deal and that doesn't usually wind up panning out the best either. Like, I mean, the most successful time I've ever done that was definitely like Dokapon Kingdom 2, because that's just like an expensive game now, but it's not like a game that you really want to go and play. Like if you played it, you kind of know that after you've played it for a while, you don't really want to go back to it. But or like I got what's that Star game with like the little mini figure ships, and there was like a Star Fox crossover. I can't remember. It's somewhere on my shelf up here. It's got like one of those Toys to Life games. I got it when it was like on
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
yeah, I just
Starlink? Is that what it's
Starlink
called?
something, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, probably. I keep wanting to say Starfield, and that's totally wrong.
Yeah, I've got that one too, actually. Starlink. It's in my closet.
Yeah. But it's like I got it, it was on sale, and it's like I played it for a little bit and never really went back to it. Or like even sometimes big games now. Like, I mean, everybody was so excited for Starfield, but I totally bounced off of that game, and I'm so glad that it was on Game Pass and I didn't have to spend $70 on something that I wasn't really gonna keep going all the way through or that invested in. So the way that I'm picking games now is so much more low impact that I'm really trying a lot more different things and just trying to get like the little bits that I can out of enjoying those experiences. Um, but you know, as far as just like things that grab me, it's like it's usually a good, good trailer or something that's familiar to something I've played before. Like I want to play Bug Fables. I've been wanting to play that for years because it's like Paper Mario. And then I want Paper Mario because I already have Paper Mario and I like it. And I would just like an updated version. So usually it's just like more of the same is what I want from my games, or something, totally new. Like I've never played anything like Dredge before. And I loved Dredge when that came out. And that was like one of those ones I hadn't really heard about until somebody who's, paying even more attention than I am started bringing it up. And then everybody started bringing it up. And it's like, okay, cool. This is definitely the thing to go for.
Yeah, I feel like I've been leaning towards like more unique experiences or stories when I'm looking for games. So a couple that come to mind are like Plague Tale when that came out initially, Plague Tale Innocence. Not a lot of people had you know, had that on their radar as far as a game that they should be playing. And then of course Requiem gets announced and a lot more people know about it. And
Yeah.
then same thing with like Senua, right? So like Hellblade was amazing. Like I absolutely loved it. And I will be buying that on not Game Pass, but I'll probably be buying it on Steam straight out to play it. And that's a
They
game
need
that
that. I feel so bad for them. I was watching an interview with that team earlier this week. Like, I'm so worried after everything that happened with Tango and everybody. They're just not, Xbox isn't advertising that game at all.
oh, I've seen tons of advertising on like social media and YouTube as of
Oh,
late.
really? From what I
Yeah.
saw last, maybe they're starting the push now because it's like 2 weeks away. But like they said in the podcast that Xbox made like one tweet about it on their official Twitter, and that's like all the
Yeah.
ad that they had really like put behind it at that time.
Well, I think that game is, I mean, and we can go back into marketing talk, right? On a lot of these.
No,
So
we don't
I've
have
been
time,
seeing
John.
I've been seeing advertisements, but I have been actively looking for stuff on that game and I've been watching videos in the past. So it would make sense to retarget me as a like, hey, it's coming out in 2 weeks type of thing.
Yeah,
But you're right, like unless you're me who actively played or like me and you played the first game, you've been looking forward to this for a long time, you're probably going to get marketed to. But it is kind of concerning for like in general if Microsoft's not really putting any dollars towards it, to try and because then that's an excuse, right? They release this great game and nobody buys it because they
well,
didn't
and
put
it
enough
took them
dollars
a
towards
long
it.
time to make this one, so it's like they're not a studio that's gonna come off of this and then just make a quick bang for your buck live service game for them. Like,
Yeah, and this is a game that had been advertised for a long time as like a critical game for Xbox.
we've
So
seen
it's
some big trailers for this at a couple E3s or Jeff
yeah,
Keighley
in the
events.
like prior years. So
Mhm.
like the fact that they're not amping this up as like a huge piece of their library is kind of concerning. And I think that can go into our first article here
Yeah, I
actually.
was just gonna say this works out really well. So I'll go first this week. I pulled a really interesting read just yesterday. So this is by Jade King at The Gamer. I'm starting to believe that Xbox just got lucky with Halo. And I mean, it's a pretty good opinion piece. It's got some, good things to say in here about that opinion. And I think it kind of adds up, honestly. Like, I've not really heard this kind of take, but hearing it like kind of concisely from one person in this, it really does seem like where would Xbox be without Halo? Like, Halo was a game from a studio being developed for a completely different platform, and then Microsoft got them, adapted it to be like the flagship thing for Xbox. And I mean, it changed the whole landscape of first person shooters. It helped lead into, online Xbox Live multiplaying games online with people. Like, it was the exact right game at the exact right time. But the further that we've gone since the original Xbox and since that, it really feels like Sega's Sonic. Like, yeah, there's been other things on there and you've had this big flagship title, but its recent outings aren't that great. Your other IPs are not household names the way that Halo is. And there's just a lot of like, you keep trying and you keep falling just a little bit short. And if Xbox had never really gotten that Halo jumpstart, like, would they even be around still as like a major first party? And now that they're starting to think about going the way of Sega and being like a big multi-platformer and getting away from potentially developing future Xboxes like after the next generation, like, it really just seems like Nintendo and Sony are gaming and Xbox was just kind of visiting for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree I would agree with this in general, right? I do think they got lucky. Uh, when you consider Halo, and I'm thinking back, like back when the Xbox was first released, people were telling me like, "Oh, the Xbox is coming out. Are you going to get a PlayStation 2? Or are you going to get an Xbox? Like, where's your mind at with that?" It's like, well, what's on the Xbox? Like,
Mhm.
what am I going to play on there? And it wasn't until Halo was released and a couple of my friends who happened to have an Xbox were like, "Oh, this is the best thing ever!" Like, and it was fantastic. I absolutely loved Halo. Spent countless hours playing it via LAN
At someone
parties
else's
online
house.
at someone else's
Yeah,
house. Yeah,
same.
I didn't own it myself, and that's the only time we ever played it was when we were together. We did now somebody would bring the console to my house, and we
Yeah,
would play
yeah,
like
but
we'd
you
play the
never owned it
campaign.
the same as I did. It was an awesome game that you had access to through other people.
Yeah, and here's the thing: when you went to that person's house and said, "What other Xbox games you have?" Nothing. It was just
Links.
Halo. Yeah, right? So, rarely any other games in a household other than Halo that were being played, and then the reason those same people got a 360 was because of Halo. That was the
Mhm.
only reason that they were playing Halo at that, or the only reason they were getting a 360 was because, "Oh, it's the only place I could continue to play Halo." And after that, we had, like, Gears of War was the big one that we would play, and that was about it. It was Halo and Gears of War. That they were Halo and Gears of War machines.
Yeah,
That's
they've got a
ultimately
great
what
line in here where they say, "Halo has become a household name since its inception 2 decades ago, but I'd struggle to say the same about Gears of War, Forza, or any other major properties on the console giant, shepherded throughout its history." Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
just those are the things. Those are the things Xbox is known for, and anymore, Gears of War is the most exciting of those. Like, Forza's that's just another,
it's a racing
annual
game.
car game. Like, there's a bunch of those. Like, it's good, but I mean, it's not moving the needle. And
Yeah,
Xbox hasn't performed with Halo. Like, its flagship title has been, 3 out of the last 3 have been relatively disappointing in the general consensus. So, if you're not leading with your best foot forward and you're just trying to, purchase and adapt and keep, doing the way they're doing things now, it just seems like their time has passed and they really like hit the thing at the right time, but they just don't have the consistency to keep it going the way Nintendo and PlayStation have.
yep, I would agree with that. Well, if you disagree with us and you think there's a lot more Xbox titles out there that we should really be considering, I mean, and here's the thing too. I'll just kind of note this. Like, let us know in the comments any thoughts on this. But I would say that there are other games that are good on the Xbox and Xbox
Oh
360 and
yeah.
Xbox One, but they're not super popular. They're not really well known. I mean, you could look at Blue Dragon was like supposed to be this
Mhm.
big RPG. You had Lost Odyssey, a fantastic RPG on the console. You had Elder Scrolls 3 was actually on Xbox as well. Like, there's a lot of good games that are out there, but Microsoft has never, they're not their own properties. That's
Yeah.
the number one. Well, I mean, now they are because of everything being acquired, but from the get go, they weren't, right?
Mhm.
And they didn't really market it as crazy as they could have. So I think there's a lot of things that have kind of contributed to the lack of folks wanting to buy an Xbox. And one of them probably is the fact that they just aren't making like fantastic first party games, or haven't in the past. And now they're at a point where everything's multi-platform. so, so why would it matter to get an Xbox moving
Yeah.
forward? Yeah. So talking about, I guess, moving forward and maybe taking a couple steps back, Sony, we talked about this a little bit back, but there are rumors of a PlayStation handheld and additional details that have been leaked. This is Truman 2 at Game Rant. So basically, we're talking about a potential successor to the PSP, which you would think is a Vita, but I guess Sony has erased that from history. And they're talking about a handheld console that will likely get paired with the PlayStation 6's release and will play PS4 games. I I don't know how I feel about this. Like,
I mean,
it's
that's
super
half of what
weird.
the PS5 does is play PS4 games. So
Well,
it's
yeah.
basically a PS5 at that point.
Yeah, I guess so, right? It's PS5 about the PS5. They're saying it could be patched down the road and it'll play PS5 games. Obviously,
Or
this would be a
streaming. You'll probably be able to
yeah.
stream PS5 games.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, it's not like you're going to throw in a PS4 disc. I mean, it's all going to be digital anyways. So it's not like you're going to have a disc-based handheld.
Well, I
It's not.
mean, natively, it'll probably be able to run PS4. But I mean,
I
that's kind of
gotcha.
the same thing that they're bidding with like the Switch 2, although now rumors are saying it might be a little more powerful, like a PS4 Pro or something. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
these handhelds, this is the wave of the future. Like the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, they've solidified a big market share of like, hey, people want these games wherever they are. And especially with Sony trying to push into like Steam and being more present on PC, giving themselves the ability to, have their games playable on these portable devices now and already be engineering and working towards that as like a good form factor and getting some games lined up ready to be executable on this device. I think that's pretty smart to kind of have that testing ground now and work
I
towards that
just,
for the next console.
I don't see how it's going to be successful at the end of the day, right? Like, they have notoriously been very bad about, their handheld consoles and providing any sort of support. So
Yeah,
yeah,
or
let's
their
just say it
VR
runs.
consoles.
Well, let's just
They just don't
say,
support anything outside of their mainline console.
yeah, exactly. So it's like, why would I want to buy a digital based handheld that plays PS4 games and could potentially play PS5? I mean, you're talking about games that at that point with the PS6 will have been over a decade old. And a lot of those games have already been ported over, like first party titles have been ported over to Steam and just PC in general. So where is a necessity as a gamer to have a PlayStation handheld that can play PS4 games? For one thing, you'll have a PS5 most likely, so you can play PS4 games there. And then there's the Portal. I don't know if the Portal will play PlayStation 4, but
Well, that's only
obviously,
streaming.
well, yes,
You
I
can't
know.
leave
But
your
what
house
I'm
with that.
no, you can, as far as I know, as long as you're on a Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah, but if you had just something that natively played those games on board, you could be anywhere.
Yeah, technically yes, but I mean,
And it would be strong
still,
enough that you could like, I mean, obviously it'd be comparable to like a Steam Deck or whatever, but it's like
and
some
that's the
people just
thing.
want a
Like,
Sony branded thing. And
it's a
Sony knows
saturated,
that.
it's a heavily saturated market.
Yeah,
So
but
I
it's one where
just,
Sony's tried to compete before.
yeah, and they failed.
But I
So,
mean, it's not at the time it was them versus Nintendo, and now
now
it'll
it's them
be
versus
them versus
Nintendo
a
and
whole
everyone
bunch of
else.
other people. Yeah, but I think that if you're looking at like people like me, the Steam Deck is awesome. I don't have one because a lot of those games on there, you got to go in and like fiddle fart with settings and you got to have it so that it's just going to work right, so that the game will work right. And the game has to be like engineered to be able to work right. Whereas with this, if it's coming from Sony, you assume that it's just going to work. You're going to get the thing, you're going to put the game on it, it's just going to work. You're not going to have to fiddle fart around with anything. And also, like, the recognition of it being like a new Sony handheld versus like, I mean, ROG is a big company, Steam is a big company, but when you look at all these like emulators and stuff out there coming from these companies, and they don't even have like a real name for the device, it's just like a serial code. Like, people want like the Sony Vectra or whatever they, call it. Like, they want like that new shiny glossy Sony product that will do all the stuff that they already own because they've already got this PS4 library, and then hope that it's going to come with a bunch of new stuff and probably be a pretty, indie proof future. Like, I would imagine any smaller games that will come out in the future will come to that device, and it'll probably find a home, but it'll probably be a huge failure like all the other portables that they've tried to come out with.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I would err on the side of caution on that one. So PSP Go, PSP Vita Part 3. So, all right, let's dive into our inflation deflation of the week. And this week was QBillion on the Game Boy. It was developed by Winkysoft. I thought it was Wingsoft for a second. Winkysoft. Published by Sata Corporation. It was released in April of 1990 as a puzzle strategy game. Don't know about any reception on this one, but Ryan, you gave us a little preview. What's a synopsis? It looks like a pretty lengthy one here.
Yeah, so you play as a mouse pushing puzzle blocks around to reduce all the levels. So basically you've got like a big square grid, and you're a mouse, and there's like if there's a box that says 1 and a box that says 2, if you stand on the box that says 1 and face the box that says 2, you can push a 1 box now to the side of that, and you'll have 3 boxes that all have a number 1, as opposed to a box that has a 1 and a box that has a 2. So that's the basic premise of this game, is that you have high numbers. You have to be on the next numerical number down to interact with that high number, and you want to reduce all of the numbers to 1 to complete the stage. And then as you go through, it introduces new concepts like shapes around the numbers that, like, for some reason cancel out when you get them all around each other. And it just becomes like something weird that I'm assuming maybe a manual would explain some of this a little bit better, because the on-screen instructions really do not help a whole lot. And you and I both got stuck at the same part. We got to level 10. If you could be level 10, you're smarter than us and a mouse.
I don't think level 10 is necessarily like I need a manual to go through it. I think it's more so it's a puzzle is what it comes to at the end of the day.
But I don't understand how the pieces interact in a meaningful way to like get me to the next stage.
Well, so I found that if you kind of move the 1 and everything over, you could reduce to 4, and then you could reduce to 3 that was in the center as well. But then you're disappearing for like your 1, so I couldn't figure out exactly what
you run out of blocks to reduce down.
Yeah, but that's a part of a puzzle, right? Is like trying to figure out and be like, oh, aha, that's how you do it. But how much time do I want to dedicate to that is the question.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I did have fun with it. Like, once I kind of got the concept, I was like, oh, this is definitely a time killer. Like,
yeah,
if you were sitting back waiting for a flight or something, or waiting for somebody to pick you up from the airport, and they're like, oh, I'm 20 minutes out, you could totally boot up QBillion and play that. Like, and I think it would give you a decent amount of time, and like the quick select to be able to like refresh, because you're like, oh shoot, I screwed that up, let me hit select and kind of just refresh the puzzle and start from scratch. It's super easy. So there's 120 levels total in this game. Tons of different puzzles that you can go through. I would say, I mean, I spent 30 minutes playing, and I thought it was pretty good overall. So going into brass tacks, a complete in-box copy is going to run you $36.03. It peaked at $41.73 in November of 2023. That's trending down in price. A loose copy right now will run you $605. That peaked at $927 in January of 2022. That is holding at this point in time. I would say, Ryan, this game, in my opinion, at $6, I would say might be deflated or just right. I think if you got a nice minty copy for like $10, you would not be sad about that. I think it's got enough going for it as far as like a puzzle game is concerned to keep you busy. It's no different than if you're picking up like a Sudoku box or Sudoku puzzle book or something, and you were kind of going through and doing that. Kind of similar in the fact that it's numerical based blocks and the movement and manipulating those puzzles and kind of getting to an endpoint within each level. So that's where I would put it. Let's say just right. I'm at just right.
I think that this is a game where, like, if you were at a con walking around and you had $5, you could pick this up. Because I think spending $5 on a Game Boy game is just like a good novel, like pretty worthwhile thing to do. Like, you're not going to miss that $5. And now you've got a Game Boy game. Like, I only have like 2 real Game Boy games like in my whole house. So like picking up a third one for $5 would feel good almost no matter what it was. So I think that you could probably do a lot better than this game in that situation. But like $6 for this game, I mean, I'm not going to miss that $6. I don't know that I'm really going to love this game forever for $6. So
It's a time killer. That's all it is, a time killer.
I'll go a little bit opposite of you, and I'll say just right to inflated, and we can agree to meet at just right in the middle.
Just right. That sounds good to me. All right, so our next game that we're going to play is going to be Super Off-Road Baja on the Super Nintendo. I'm pretty sure that's the next one. Yeah, it is, because Erguys follows that one. So that'll be our next game, and then we'll unveil our next 4 titles that we'll be looking forward to playing. So
you can play along or, not. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, if you played this game as well,
you know what we're doing. You got the schedule now.
Exactly. If you're playing this game or did play it with us, let us know what you think. Definitely curious to get other opinions out there. And did you get past level 10? So, all right. Well, for now, this has been episode 287 of the Game Deflators Podcast. My name's John.
I'm Ryan.
And thanks for listening.